The 2025 Commissioner's Cup playoffs are here as the Danbury Hat-Tricks have locked up the 2 seed and know their opponent. It's the 3 seed Port Huron Prowlers, and it starts this weekend in what is a road game for the Hat-Tricks in Port Huron, Michigan on Friday. Then they come back home on Saturday for a home game. In case it's necessary, it's going to be Game 3 on Sunday, again at the Danbury Ice Arena. Wyatt Kopelman here with Matt Voity, the general manager of the Hat-Tricks. And Matt, before we get into everything that the postseason can present a team like the Hat-Tricks, especially one that sets out to get a Commissioner's Cup championship for the second time in 3 seasons, just take a look back on Saturday's win. It was a 5-2 win against the Watertown Wolves. A very resounding response from the team, especially after what it did against Binghamton on Friday. What were some of your overall takeaways? How do you think the team did, particularly offensively, to finish the regular season strong?
I thought our energy was good, coming off of Binghamton. I know some guys were pretty down, a little bit discouraged about it. So it was good to see that for sure. I think offensively, we were right back at it. We had a little more ice to work with, and we took advantage of it, and we had some good chances that we were able to finish on.
Do you think you got enough pucks to the net on Saturday against Watertown? Now, I know you were kind of in the mid-20s at Binghamton on Friday. Do you think the getting pucks to the net on Saturday was something that was much needed to get the scoring chances that you had?
Of course, yeah. I mean, you have to get the puck on net to score, and I thought we did a good job of that. I thought we were a little more, sometimes a little bit too patient with it, but I think overall it was pretty good. You
had a 2-1 lead in the middle of that game, in the middle frame that is, and it looked like Watertown had a little bit of an answer, especially on the power play. Both goals were via special teams, but Johnny Ruiz, Dylan Hullaby, they each had 2 goals to help lift the Hat-Tricks to victory and really get the offensive performance needed to hopefully translate into the playoffs. What did you think they did so well to set up themselves for success offensively?
I think they were in the right spots. They took the right routes to the puck, and Holly definitely, took advantage of. I think the goalie was a little bit out of position there, but he got the shot off. He got off from a good distance. It wasn't too close where the goalie has a little bit more of an advantage. And Johnny's just Johnny, just keeps on keeping on.
He keeps on keeping on. He tipped home the game-winning goal just 20 seconds into the third period off of Chase Harwell's miss from the middle of the left circle. It really says a lot about not only the meaning of skill on the ice, but also the timing and also positioning on the ice as well to get home a couple of goals, especially one that may not be that unique or dazzling in terms of skill level, but it was a good win for the Hat-Tricks. They won 5-2 against the Watertown Wolves, and now you have a wild card game this year, so it'll be interesting to see how the Wolves play against the Rockers in the 4 versus 5 matchup. But particularly for this team this weekend, it faced 2 very familiar opponents, 2 of which, the Binghamton Black Bears and the Watertown Wolves, that the Hat-Tricks faced at the start of the season very often in the first 6 weeks of the year. Did either of these games, the atmospheres this team played in this weekend, did those feel like playoff atmospheres to this team?
It's certainly Friday night and bingo did. I think Saturday night did. I think we kind of owned the game from the beginning. So I don't think it quite had that same feel, but I think Binghamton had it for sure. So that was definitely good to feel for the guys.
And what did you tell your team going into Saturday night? And of course, you want to finish on a high note. The points, they didn't have any implications anymore because the team had the number 2 seed for about 2 weeks already. It was set to face Port Huron. What did you tell this team in order to give the fans the right showing that they deserve, and of course, the team the offensive momentum it needed to go into the playoffs?
It was really just about how we play and how we play going into the playoffs. You want to have a good game. You want that last game to be good and your details to be good, and it's easy. It's easy for us as coaches to say that. Remember when you play, the game. I think you have nothing to play for, but it doesn't really affect too much, and you're kind of already looking ahead. And I think we were doing that a little bit Friday. I think our details could have been much better. I think they got better as we went on. But that was pretty much the message: is let's go into the playoffs executing the right way.
I know you mentioned after the win on Saturday how much details would still be a point of emphasis in practice this week. Is that something that only requires a lot of saying to the players in practice, or are there certain things that you can do to make that a big part of what you're doing to prepare for Port Huron?
Well, I think you look at the video and you pick out the details and you make sure you have drills that point out those details or bring those details out. And, we've done a lot of that the last 2 days. So it's more than just us saying to them. It's reminding them. I mean, you have to constantly remind guys and really get down to I think sometimes with coaching, it's but even at this level, you have to be willing to get down to like a granular level of, okay, this is exactly what I need you to do, or this is exactly the read you need to make, and that sort of thing, instead of just saying, okay, well, this detail here, and you have to kind of get them into that moment and show them, and that can take some time, and it takes a lot of patience.
It takes a lot of patience. It takes time, especially with a blend of rookies as well as even some veterans who have played for different coaches in the FPHL, professional hockey. Alexander Vasilyev, he's on a new stretch right now, especially having formerly played in the KHL. When you look at a player like Vasi, he has 5 goals, 8 assists since returning from the IR. I know we've talked about him a little bit, but how much do you foresee him being a difference maker on his line come postseason when it's not just about having a dynamite top line?
I mean, yeah. I've talked to these guys about that, for a couple of weeks now. We need contributions up and down the lineup. Like, you can't just rely on one guy, and whether that's Van Durken, whether it's Johnny, whether that's Hardy or whoever, everyone's got to be able to chip in, at the right time. Timely goals, timely plays. Vasi, he's a pro. I think he's been really good. I think he's played his best hockey since coming off the IR. Good roots, good feet, a little more physical, just making good decisions. And, sometimes you have that much skill, you get a little too cute, but he's able to reel himself back in. So I expect him to be a difference maker for us.
Speaking of making a difference, when you see somebody like that who may get a little bit too glamorous with the puck, if you will, try and create opportunities in the neutral zone instead of fitting within the systems, do you feel like that can set an example for the rookies in order to steer clear from doing that and playing within the plan or strategics for the team it has to go out and win?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just goes to our, part of our culture and having accountability. And, the film doesn't lie, at the end of the day. And I think everyone sees where everyone's kind of taken their lumps this year and have had to been held accountable, whether it's Johnny, whether it's, a kid like Dimitri Christou. It doesn't matter. You're going to be held accountable. And I think when, a player like Vasi being able to be held accountable, willing to be held accountable, that's really the most important thing. Whether it's about holding onto the puck or whatever, his willingness to be held accountable and take the coaching, take the teaching, take the lesson, I think that goes a long way with the younger guys.
In the last 3 weekends, this team has exploded offensively for the most part. It's averaged just more than 5 goals per game over the last 3 weekends. It's played some different opponents in terms of skill, in terms of strategics, the Dashers to the Black Bears to the Wolves. Even HC Venom, that was a relative barn burner, 5-4 victory in that makeup game a couple weeks ago over in Poughkeepsie. What excites you the most about how this team is earning the scoring chances? Is the team earning a lot of scoring chances going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like you talk about the different levels of teams we've played, and it's sometimes that's the challenge in and of itself, especially like, I look back at that Mississippi game, and I think early on, we were doing things really well, and, but then we start to realize how much ice we have when we start to slow down and get a little comfortable, and then the next night it's maybe not quite as much, and because you kind of sniff it out and you kind of know, or you get a little overconfident. I think we're doing things the right way. I think being able to shift from having so much ice to having less ice when you play at Binghamton has probably been our biggest challenge. But I think that kind of does start a little bit more from our transition, whether it's just coming off a D-zone possession or an actual, they chip a puck into the neutral zone and we're moving it up. I think we can be a little bit better there. I think we can be a little bit quicker, just realizing we have a little bit less time, but it also can help us because it keeps things pretty simple, right? It's just D to D wall or, D to D flip, depending on what the play is. So I think that's probably been our biggest challenge. I think we're doing things right. I think we have the right ideas. I think it just, now going into the playoffs, whether it's Port, whether it's bingo, like we have to realize there's just going to be a little bit less ice or a lot less ice in some cases, and we have to, simplify our game to be successful.
You've been with this franchise since its inception back in 2019. Of course, you had a major role in leading this team to its first Commissioner's Cup title back in 2023. Now, Johnny, first time as a co-head coach, he's in the playoffs after a winning season. He's worn the C on his chest. We've talked a little bit about the responsibilities, having that off the ice, and then also playing, coaching as well. As you consider how this team finished the season 6-4 in its final 10 games, you have a mix of talent with rookies, with veterans who, some of which have seen this league more than others, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to turn in wins. You don't want to be in a situation where you play a third game and you could potentially rest up for another opponent. Then again, it's about going one game at a time. How do you keep a mix of experience focused on preparing the right way in practice this week and of course playing for one another, whether they're rookies or they're third, fourth year veterans?
I mean, I think everyone kind of, you can't replace experience, right? Like if you haven't been through it, and we do have some guys who haven't been through it. They haven't been, maybe they were in a playoff in junior college, but they haven't been through something like this where it's 3-3, the travel's, crazy. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But that's where, we have a good veteran group that's going to talk to those guys and help them through it, and show them some things that can help them to preserve their bodies and to recover, especially when we come back from Port on Friday night, Saturday morning. And I think the experience, I think we have enough experience, when we get to those game threes that we'll be okay. We're not completely raw, we're not completely green. So I think, the experiences we've had over the last couple of years are going to be big. I mean, there's still a lot of guys in that room that played in Motor City last year that played the 3-3 with bingo the year before. So
have you noticed a lot of them step up in practice even as the team's getting off the ice and going back to change in the dressing room, just engaging or sparking some conversations about curbing that excitement for the rookies and just, again, focusing on the systems?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see it like in those situations, but I mean, I know it's happening. I don't think we've had to. I think we've been learning throughout all this. That's really been my message the last 2 months is, especially, once we got second place, it's like, hey, we have to learn from, we just went from Mississippi to bingo. And you go from 11 goals to, a 6-3, 6-2, had the lead, lost the lead. And sometimes that alone is enough to teach you, hey, you know what, I need to stay even keeled and stay with the process here. But, our vets are pretty good about managing that excitement.
And how are the team energy levels in practice right now? Is it a lot of tempo as it relates to what a practice looks like going into Port Huron on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really good. I challenged the guys and said, hey, like, how good can we play? And how really, when you break that down to a practice, it's how good can we be at our details and how we do things today. And just break that down to a drill. How good can we be in this drill, depending on what the drill's calling for. So I think the energy's been really good. I think guys are up. I think guys are excited. I think the minds have been, dialed in and focused, and it's been pretty good.
Playoff hockey, anything can happen, especially as it relates to change momentum. All of a sudden, could be 5-on-3, could be just playing with a double minor that all of a sudden allows a team to score one in a hurry when a team needs a goal to get back in the game, make it a one-goal game, make it a tie game. Is part of your message also containing, or I guess, are you saying to the team a lot about how much it is important to respond from adversity as much as it is just going prepared into a team like Port Huron you've seen a lot of times this season?
Well, I think, some of that conversation too is just, how is the postseason called? Like, the refs are a little bit more quiet in the postseason. So we have to understand that and not get distracted on the bench by a missed call or whatever. I think in terms of handling momentum, we've talked about the last couple of weeks and dictating momentum and controlling at least our end of that. That's a lot of that's just staying even keeled, and a lot of it's just the good habits, having a good change, maybe dumping the puck, keeping the pressure on them while the other four guys change, things like that that are really going to help us with that. In terms of the calls and whatnot, I think this team's done a pretty good job of responding when they feel they haven't gotten the call the last month or 2 months. So I think we've had some good practice at that, so I think that should serve us well.
Gave up only 2 goals to Watertown on Saturday. It would seem like that could translate into a team like Port Huron that, there were some really close games in the final 3-4 matchups of the regular season against Port Huron. This team had faced Port Huron at 1.5 times in a stretch of 9 games. So as it pertains to seeing Port Huron, do you get the sense that this team knows the tendencies and the style that Port Huron plays going into the playoffs now?
Yeah, I think we have definitely some good understanding of it. That was a really challenging time in our schedule for us, so I think we have a pretty good memory of it. And I think we understand what we need to do on our end to be successful against Port.
As you look at film this past weekend against Binghamton and Watertown, are there any adjustments that you're looking to make on the back end as well as you say, details and what it takes to make adjustments before the playoffs with a mix of rookies and veterans? Are you looking to make adjustments on the back end too?
Yes, we are going to adjust some details and some small things in how we do things, for sure.
When you look at how this team has continued to grow over the last 2 months, owning starts has been something that has been a point of emphasis. What else have you learned about the team over the last 2 months? I know you had mentioned on Saturday, since the Blue Ridge Series lost, this team still had a lot of learning to do, not only perhaps on the ice within the systems, but learning about one another. What have you learned about the way this group continues to respond from adversity?
I think they're a resilient group. They don't stay down long. And that's a really good thing to see. Maybe sometimes overlooked and underrated is the ability to bounce back, at least, in your mind energetically. I think they're a group that really, I think to a man, deeply cares about this team, this organization, and winning in this city. And I think when we have gotten discouraged, it's maybe part of that, where they don't want to let anybody down. They don't want to let themselves down. They want to let their teammates down. They want to let the fans down. The owners, anybody like that. So I think that's something you have to manage and kind of reframe it for them, where it's, hey, it's great, but now you've got to understand there's a process here to how to do it, and there's a certain mindset you have to have. And we've talked about mindset a lot the last couple of weeks, and that just plays into being able to handle the adversity. And back to what you said before, and I think the biggest thing those are probably the biggest things I've learned from this team, and I think their willingness to learn. Sometimes at this level, some guys think they know it, or some guys it's tough for them to change. Not that it comes from a bad place, but it's tough for them to change their habits or the way their mind sees the game, or to adjust that. These guys really want to learn, and they're sponges, and they want to make the adjustments, and they want to be better, which is, it's a great thing to have that in a group.
And part of making adjustments has paid off for what this team has done in the midst of games as well in the dressing room, as it takes messages from first-year co-ed coaches, Johnny Ruiz, Kyle Gonzalez. You also take a look at how this team has kind of created a new identity for itself. It's had 13 come-from-behind wins this season. So comeback kids has been pretty common for this team. Is it exciting to see this team kind of rebuild on its mistakes, and maybe not rebuild, but just correct mistakes in real time during games and make a lot of wins happen toward much needed points, as it's had Port Huron on its tail for most of the season?
Oh yeah, I think, like I said, the ability of this group or the willingness for them to learn and make adjustments it's great as a coach, because it means you're flexible. You're flexible in your approach, and you can be flexible. And but I think some of those comebacks are definitely our leadership. Definitely a number of comebacks are led by our captain, and down from there, which is, when your captain's leading the way, how do you not follow in that way? So I think the combination of leadership and willingness to learn has been it's been a treat for me to watch and be a part of.
And it's not all interactions that the coaches have had as well. You see individuals like Chase Harwell, who's been a center in this league for 2 seasons now, Gleb Van Durken, Hat-Trick's Rookie of the Year and Hat-Trick's Offensive Player of the Year as well. Do you see a lot of cohesion between them when it comes to learning about the game for a 25-year-old rookie like Gleb Van Durken?
Yeah. I think, Gleb, didn't play last year. So he came in, he was a little bit behind, but he's been quick to learn. And I got to give credit to, his 2 line mates, his countrymen. I think they help him. I think they help him with the adjustment and the, whatever language barrier there may be. But he's picked up a lot. He's learned a lot since day one. It's funny you brought that up. I was thinking back to his first game in Watertown, and I didn't know what to expect. And I think he got a goal on his first shift. So it's like, all right, this is good.
It's good to see. It's good to see Gleb Van Durken thriving. He's probably been in Rookie of the Year league award conversations. He's been up there numerous times this season in terms of point production with Lucas Lockney. Speaking of which, with Port Huron, he had just won Rookie of the Month for the FPHL round of awards as well. You see others on Binghamton as well. As you look at Port Huron, this is a team that certainly not one to take lightly. It's been similar to the Hat-Tricks in terms of penalty kill. It's fared better on the PK over the last couple of weeks as the regular season winds down here. What do you think it's going to really take to outlast Port Huron, with the fact that it can put up goals in a hurry? It has a certain number of veterans, Matt Graham, one of them. What do you think it's going to take to establish a lot of momentum, own starts in Game 1 on Friday at Port Huron?
I think just what we've talked about with, emotional consistency, mental consistency. I think understanding that it's never easy to end someone's season, no matter who they are, where they are in the standings. It's hard to end someone's season, and we have to be prepared to do that. We have to be prepared to be the nightmare for them. That's really what our goal should be, is to be a nightmare for them and end their season.
And how about in the neutral zone? How much does that factor in? I know that you said on Saturday this team played a little bit loose out of the gates. Friday was a little bit of a concern as well, taking care of pucks in the neutral zone. How much do you see that factoring in besides just what you do in the D zone?
Oh yeah, puck management and advancing zones it's always a key to it, and we have to be even more efficient at that. I think we've always needed to get better at it. I think we are getting better. I think we need to take a step this weekend and be really efficient with pucks coming out of our zone, out of the neutral zone and into the O zone. And then even when we get there, just possessing pucks and protecting pucks, there's going to be a premium on that, and it's going to be huge.
One last note about what it takes to prepare for Port Huron. You have a unique group of goalies this season because of somebody like Frankie McClendon, who's grown so much, next to Connor McCollum, who has turned in his second straight 21 season in as many years in this league. So it's not as if you're working with rookie goalies as much as it is trying to develop the individual netminders you already have. As somebody who has worked with Connor, Frankie in the past, what are you telling them as they're going into this series and, of course, wanting to get the best starts they can of themselves?
Stop the puck.
Just stop the puck?
It's more like, it's when you're with guys like that and you have the amount of conversations, a lot of times it's a quick not even a 5-minute conversation, and, MC understands where we are and what we need to do, especially off of last year, coming off of Motor City. Frankie's been around. He's got a ring on his finger with this team and with another team in this league. So they both get it. Really, it's just part of the conversation we've had all year is just staying within yourselves, making sure you're mentally ready, not worrying about what's happening outside of your goalie pads, and just being, ready to play and having your body ready.
What's one word you think that this team can take in when it comes to taking on Port Huron, making that transition? Is it just physical? I know you said that word a lot this season, but what's one word to summarize the transition and be mentally ready for Friday?
Killers. Got to be killers.
Got to be killers. Got to make it a nightmare for the Port Huron Prowlers on Friday. The Hat Tricks take on the Prowlers. Puck drop 7:05 from McMorran Arena on Friday night, and then they return home on Saturday. That's an 8 o'clock puck drop here at the Danbury Ice Arena. We hope to see you here for Game 2 and possibly Game 3 on Easter Sunday as well. Matt, always great to speak with you. Winning is on the mind of everybody as the Hat Tricks take on the 3 seed Port Huron Prowlers. Always great to catch up. Best of luck in Port Huron Friday.
Thanks, Wyatt.